I'm going to turn now to the Word of God and a message that really is going to be centered around one question. What is truth? And this is a question that was originally asked by Pontius Pilate as he was considering whether or not to hand Jesus over to crucifixion. But even though this question has been asked so many years ago, in a completely different culture, in a completely different historical and sociological context, this question is still incredibly relevant to us today. For nowadays, we don't even know what truth is. Nowadays, in fact, truth is not presented anymore as an absolute, like the truth, but rather as something that is subjective and susceptible to bias, to perceptions, to personality, and so on. So much so that today we're talking about my truth, your truth, their truths, and so on and so forth. And this is something that has definitely been endorsed by the media, certainly has been endorsed by Hollywood and many prominent figures, many prominent influencers in these industries. In a Golden Globe speech, for example, Oprah Winfrey, I'm pretty sure by now every Brit knows who Oprah Winfrey is for that famous interview. And I'm not suicidal, I'm not going to go down that route, so I'm not going to talk about it. But in a Golden Globe speech, she said, "What I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool that we all have." Another example, Tana Smith. You probably don't know her. She's a YouTuber. She's got a following of about 300,000 people. And in one of her videos, she said this: "The reason to speak your truth is to help people and be more connected and create more of a sense of oneness and community. It is not about being right." And in these particular cases, in the instance of the two quotes that I've just mentioned, both Tana and Oprah Winfrey refer to, with this expression, your truth, they refer to one's personal journey, perspective, perceptions, and convictions that, however, as personal truths, they cannot be questioned, challenged, or criticized, but only accepted. And this trend has really become particularly prominent in our very individualistic, if not self-centered, postmodernist era, particularly among our young people, to the point that we're even talking about alternative facts. Apart from its undeniable philosophical pitfalls, because how can you have valid truths that are in direct contradiction with each other and with objective reality? This attempt to redefine truth as subjective is something that is not only incredibly misguided, if not nonsensical, but it's actually very, very dangerous. I'll give you an example. Most of all will probably be aware of a beheading that happened recently in France. We were all shocked to hear of this person that almost at random, or at least that's what it looked like, got beheaded by an Islamic extremist just in the middle of the road. An extremist that eventually got stopped by the police and killed during that encounter. What we may not know is that the name of this man that was beheaded, Samuel Paty, he was a French teacher who basically got reported by one of his students on the grounds of Islamophobia in the class. And because of this report, because of this complaint, he ended up being beheaded. And as I said, this Islamist extremist ended up picking up a knife and cutting his head off in broad daylight. But what we do not know, and this is something that has not really been massively reported in our news outlets, is that after the incident, it turned out that this girl's complaint was based on a false narrative of the events, and that her teacher did not behave in an Islamophobic way at all. So her truth and her alternative facts about what happened actually ended up costing this man his life. Well, this morning we're going to see how subjective truth cost Jesus his life. But unlike Samuel Paty, Jesus was by all means not an unfortunate victim of subjective truth. As we will soon be reminded of as we celebrate Easter, Jesus was in fact born to die the death of the cross, shedding his life as a sacrifice for salvation for all mankind. And his sacrifice, as we're going to see this morning, calls us to make a choice between truths. The truth of the masses and the truth of Jesus. Between subjective truth and absolute truth. Between a truth that pleases the crowds and a truth that pleases heaven. One that leads to death while the other leads to life. So let's just have a look at the conversation between Pontius Pilate and Jesus, in which Pontius Pilate eventually asked Jesus, what is truth? And we can find it in John chapter 18 from verse 28 to verse 39. And I'm going to be reading from the English Standard Version. So then they, that is the religious leaders, led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas, who was the high priest back then, to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. So Pilate went outside to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered him, "If this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." The Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken, to show by what kind of death he was going to die. So Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" And Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting, that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from the world." Then Pilate said to him, "So you're a king?" And Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." And Pilate then said to him, "What is truth?" And after he had said this, he went back outside to the Jews and told them, "I find no guilt in him, but you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. So, do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" But they cried out again, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber. He was a criminal. So there you have it. After Jesus is arrested by the religious authorities and initially questioned privately, he then gets taken to the governor, to Pontius Pilate, to be tried and hopefully executed. Now, because of their religious Puritanism, really, they couldn't enter the praetorium or the governor's headquarters. because according to their traditions, that exposure to non-Jews would have defiled them and made it impossible for them to then partake into the Passover feast. And so they allowed Jesus to go in on his own, and that really gave Pilate the opportunity to question him on his own face to face. And the Gospel of John is the only one that really describes in such detail the conversation that happened between the two, and exposing really Pontius Pilate's conflicting thoughts and feelings about Jesus. You see, as governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate was very much acquainted with, not just with the culture, but with the beliefs of the Jews. And not only that, he was well aware of the controversy around Jesus and his identity. And so he got straight to the point. He asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" For that was Jesus' accuser's primary accusation. Now, Jesus, throughout his ministry, throughout his life on earth, particularly in his encounters with the Pharisees, he's been accused of all sorts, including blasphemy. And but there's a reason why they only brought forward one charge. You know, this man claims to be the king of the Jews. Because the Pharisees, in their envy of Jesus' spiritual and religious success, of his incredible following, they wanted to do away with him. Also because they hated him. They hated him because he kept on just unveiling and revealing to everyone, you know, their hypocrisy. They were holier than thou on the outside, but on the inside they were more rotten than a prostitute. And they hated that. They often ended up having arguments with him, but every time they had a word encounter with him, they always ended up running away with their tails between their legs. There was no measure of argument that they could bring up against Jesus that Jesus could not break up and break down. And there was no measure of hiding away their true colors that Jesus could not expose. So they didn't just want him to be arrested. They didn't just want him to be, I don't know, fined or publicly humiliated. They wanted him gone. They wanted him dead. But the thing is, Israel at that particular time wasn't a sovereign state. It was under Roman occupation. In fact, Israel didn't exist. What existed was the province of Judea, a province of the Roman Empire. And whereas these provinces were allowed to, a measure of sovereignty, you know, with regards to certain aspects of local government, when it came to capital punishment, that was outside of their reach. It was outside of their authority. And this is why they couldn't kill Jesus. And this is why they brought him to the governor and accused him of basically proclaiming himself the king of the Jews. Because Judea wasn't a sovereign nation, and as such was not allowed to have a king. And anyone who sought to appropriate that position was going to be condemned by the Roman authorities for treason, for challenging the authority of Caesar. And the punishment for treason was crucifixion. Okay? So that's why they brought him to the governor, and that's why they accused him of being the king of the Jews. So Pontius Pilate asks him this very direct question: "Are you the king of the Jews?" That's when Jesus pointed out to him that he was indeed a king. He did not deny that. But that his kingdom was not of this world, or at least not yet, as we know from Scripture. And that as such, he hadn't come to overthrow Roman occupation. Rather, he had come to restore truth. "For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. And everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." To which Pilate responded with that very short question. What is truth? Now, this question has been baffling Bible scholars for centuries, because we were not there in the room. We can only read what he said, but we weren't there to kind of read his body language, to read his facial expression. So we don't really know what made him, what motivated him to ask that particular question, and with what tone and with which attitude. You know, was he jesting Jesus? Was he mocking him with that question, like, what is truth? Was he being skeptical about the truth, about the fact that there could ever be an absolute truth? Was he being sarcastic? Was that just a rhetoric question? Or was it a genuine question coming from a genuine desire to know the truth? Now, my personal understanding of this question, you know, in view of the same account but brought forward by other gospels, so from slightly different perspectives, is that this question was motivated, or at least carried all sorts of different and even contrasting feelings. There was certainly a sense of curiosity about Jesus in this man. There was certainly a desire to know exactly what was truth, but there was also a measure of skepticism. If you think about it, Pontius Pilate was well aware of Jesus' miraculous powers. Being governor of Judea, he knew what happened every time Jesus gathered people. He knew the incredible following that he had. You know, had Jesus been doing ministry nowadays, he would have been a celebrity. He would have been certainly an influencer, you know, with hundreds of thousands of people following him on social media. He was well aware of the traction that he had on people, and he was well aware of the many accounts of the miraculous taking place wherever Jesus went. Not only that, in the Gospel of Matthew we are told that as he was questioning Jesus, he got a note from his wife. His wife was basically told him, have nothing to do with this righteous man, for I have suffered greatly in a dream because of him. So Pontius Pilate was just inundated with these different accounts that carried something supernatural, something otherworldly. And then all of a sudden he speaks with this man who tells him, I am a king, but not of this world. My kingdom is not of this world. And so Pontius Pilate must have put two and two together. He must have begun to suspect, maybe there is definitely something odd about this one. You know, this isn't just a lunatic. He doesn't just say crazy things. Crazy stuff happens around it. So Pilate was well aware of Jesus' miraculous powers. And certainly there was a measure of intrigue and curiosity about Jesus. But secondly, Pilate was a very well-educated and traveled Roman official. He had seen the world and heard about all sorts of truths. Every nation conquered by the Roman Empire had their own gods, had their own beliefs, and had their own truths. And as such, he was likely a man desperate for a true north, wondering, you know, which of them is right? What is truth? What are we supposed to believe? But his high exposure to diverse cultures and beliefs probably made him skeptical that such truth even existed. And in the diverse, globalized world in which we live, where everyone has an opinion, where everyone has a belief, where everyone has their own truths, we might feel exactly the same. You know, in a world where there are so many different religions, and just looking at Christianity, you know, it's got over 40,000 denominations across the world. What is truth, even if we wanted to find it? Where would we even begin? Where would we even start? We all crave to know the truth. We all crave, we're all desperate for an absolute immovable sense of direction and a true north, really, in our lives, in our consciousness, something that would reduce the anxiety of indetermination, of not really knowing exactly where we're going, who we are, what's going to happen after we die, and so on. But when there are so many options out there, it's very easy for people to think, you know what, I don't think there's an absolute truth. You know, whatever works for you, works for you. Whatever works for me, works for me. But ultimately, Pontius Pilate was a Roman governor bound by duty to Caesar. Irrespective of how he felt, irrespective of whether or not he wanted to find out the truth about Jesus for himself, he was tasked with a very important task, with a very important duty, and that was keeping the peace in a very hot province of the Roman Empire, because the Jews weren't ruled very easily. And anything could happen at any given moment. They could stir up the crowd, start a riot, start a rebellion, and whatever. In fact, that's exactly what happened in 70 AD, when the Romans were so fed up of Jerusalem. They not only they destroyed it, but razed it to the ground, okay? They did not leave one stone upon another, just as Jesus had prophesied would happen after his death and resurrection, and very much so as a consequence of Israel refusing to receive him as the promised Messiah. But this is a different story. So yes, Pontius Pilate didn't have time for such questions. He didn't have time for such problems. And this is why, as soon as he asked the question, what is truth? He walked out. He didn't even wait for Jesus to give him an answer. He was a man under orders. And as we read in other Gospels, despite his attempts to release Jesus, because he realized that his so-called claim to kingship was not a threat to Roman occupation, because he was talking about spiritual kingship. He tried to release Jesus, but ended up pleasing the angry mob. And we read in Mark chapter 15, verses 9 to 15, a bit of an account about what happened in more detail. So Pontius Pilate went back to the religious leaders and said, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release for them Barabbas instead. And Pilate again said to them, "Then what shall I do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" And they cried out to again, "Crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowds, wow, wishing to satisfy the crowds, released for them Barabbas. And having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. And in another gospel, in the Gospel of Luke, we read that they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he, that is Jesus, should be crucified. And we read that their voices prevailed. Now, the narrative that we just looked at presents us with really many parallels in the way our generation is seeking for and relating to this whole subject of truth, as well as some crucial principles for anyone seeking truth today. And I would like to just talk with you about three of these principles and three of these parallels, really, that make this story so very relevant to us today. And the first one is that we've all got to make our own choice based on our own encounter with Jesus and nothing else, okay? When Pontius Pilate started questioning Jesus, starting off with the most direct question possible, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus didn't answer straight away. He basically asked him to tell him where that question was coming from, and told him, "Did you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me? That is this your conviction about me, or are you just echoing the voice of the crowd? Back then there were many truths about Jesus and his identity. From prophet to political leader, from the reincarnation of the prophet Elijah to the resurrected John the Baptist, from Messiah to blasphemer. There was a plethora of different opinions and different truths about who Jesus was. But Jesus never cared about what the masses thought about him. All he was ever concerned about was the individual stance of those that he encountered. And we get a beautiful example when he was with his 12 disciples and he asked them the question, who do people say that I am? And they would say, well, some people say you're a prophet, some people say that you are the prophet Elijah reincarnate, this, that, and the other. But then Jesus stopped and said, yeah, but who do you think, who do you say that I am? And that's when the Apostle Peter, just filled with the Holy Spirit, filled by a real revelation from God, came out with this beautiful statement. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And that's when Jesus then replied, saying, blessed are you, Peter, for flesh and blood did not reveal this to you. That is, this knowledge came from heaven to you, from God to you. And on this, you are Peter, and on this rock, by this rock he was referring to the statement that he just spoke. I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So Jesus wasn't really concerned with what the world thought about him. He was concerned about what people individually knew and understood about him. For faith, in order to be effective, cannot rest on what we have inherited, either from our family. I don't know if they're historically Christians or not Christians, or inherited from our culture and the generation that we belong to. Faith must be grounded on our own personal encounter with Jesus in order to matter anything. And I hope that this will speak to some people. Because some people are Christians because they've inherited their faith. I was born in a Catholic family, or I was born in an evangelical family. I don't know, as a child I used to go to church, and so the knowledge that you have of Jesus is not based on your own personal encounter with him. It's based on whatever it is that was passed on to you. From your parents, from your priest, from your RE teacher, from whatever. Let me tell you, if this is the faith that you call faith, let me tell you it's no faith. It looks like faith, but it's not faith. Because it's not based on your own personal encounter with Jesus. It's recycled information. And you all know what happens with recycled information. It's Chinese whisper. If you want to know the truth about Jesus, you've got to have an encounter with him. An encounter that makes you leave from there, knowing who he is, irrespective of whatever other people may say about Jesus. That is true faith. And that is the kind of faith that will survive anything. Any pressure, any challenge. You know who he is because you've met with him, because you talk to him, because he lives within you. And there's nothing that nobody else can tell you that will ever change your mind. Why? Because that information is just an echo of the crowd. It's just an echo of the culture. It's just an echo of, I don't know, human reasonings that waves like a flag depending on whichever direction the wind blows. But yours will be based on encounter, will be based on, hey, I know him because I talked to him. I know him because he did stuff to me. Because he saved me, because he changed my life, because he did stuff that nobody else could do, right? We've got to make our own choice, and I hope that you will too, if you haven't made it just yet. The second thing is that we can't please both camps. And that's the hard truth that Pilate had to learn the hard way. We either satisfy the crowds or we satisfy heaven. We either please the crowds or we please heaven. And if we choose for Christ, we must expect, yes, rejoicing in heaven, but also a riot on earth. We cannot receive Christ for who he says he is. We cannot proclaim our knowledge of Christ based on our experience of him without expecting some form of pushback, if not persecution. And a gospel that placates the crowds and satisfies culture while claiming to please God, let me tell you, is not the gospel. Because you can't please both camps. Either it is the true gospel that offends because it's offensive to the flesh, because it's offensive to human knowledge and human reasoning and human wisdom, because it's an offense to our pride, because it's an offense to our self-centeredness and individuality, because it's an offense to much of our thinking and lifestyle, because it is in disobedience to God. Either it is that gospel that shines with the glory of God, that pleases God, that actually is powerful unto salvation, or it is something that pleases the crowd, that looks like the gospel, that looks like it pleases heaven, but actually it's enraging heaven. That gospel, let me tell you, to quote the Apostle Paul, has an appearance of godliness, yet it has denied its power. Its power to set free, its power to forgive, its power to save, its power to give life, its power to break addiction, its power to heal miraculously, its power to turn a life upside down, its power to turn graves into gardens and beauty out of ashes, like we sing in one of our songs. So we've got to make our own choice, and we can't please both camps. And thirdly, whereas there are many perspectives, there is only one truth. Everything else is just a cheap counterfeit. In a culture of multiple truths and different ways to the same God, Jesus declares, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one goes to the Father except through me. Wow! What a statement. What a statement. Jesus didn't just say, I know the truth, like every other religious leader that you can think of. He said, I am the truth. I am truth personified. You seek truth, you can't have it without me, because I am the truth. And because I am the truth, I am not just the only source of life, but I'm the only way to the Father. Unlike any other religious leaders that claim to be pointing you to God, I'm actually taking you to him. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, and nobody, that's a fairly exclusive term, isn't it? Nobody goes to the Father except through me. What a statement. No religious leader in the history of mankind ever dared to make such a claim. They've made some crazy claims, some incredible claims, but nobody ever claimed what he claimed. But he did. Because unlike any other religious leaders to have ever walked this earth, he is the only one who existed before his birth. He is the only one to have come from beyond. Like he pointed out to Pilate, he is not of this world. He transcends it. He's the only one who can tell us who we are because he's the one who made us. He's the only one who can reveal the future because he's the only one who wrote it from before time began. He's the only one who can tell us who God is because he's the only one who has come from him. And even more than that, he is one with him. He's the only one who can save us from God's judgment, because he's the only one to have suffered it in our stead, so that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life, should not be discarded as a rebel but should be welcomed as a child. Do you disagree with it? That's fine by me, but let me ask you one question: on what basis? You know, a true liberal society allows anyone to have whatever opinion, whatever belief, right? And that's actually a very biblical value. Jesus never forced the truth down anybody's throat, okay? And neither will we. Do you want to be a Buddhist? Be a Buddhist. You know, do you want to be, a Muslim? Be a Muslim. You know, am I going to hate you? Of course not. You know, I have some friends that come from the very opposite spectrum of my faith and my lifestyle, and yet we're very good friends. We're excellent friends, and we've been friends for years. I've got a lovely couple of that live on my street. They're Palestinians, you know, Muslim Palestinians. That you know, many of their views are polar opposite from mine, but you know, we get along really well with each other. They've been over 2 hours for an afternoon tea. We've been over to theirs for a brunch. You know, oh wow, what a brunch! I'll never forget that. They you know, pulled out all the stops. It was amazing. You know, that's fine. You can believe whatever you want about Jesus, but the question is, on what basis would you disagree with what I just said? Is it because you've tested what I've just said and found it to be false? Or is it just because you're an echo? Because your views, your truths are just an echo of the masses? They're just stuff that you've inherited one way or another. Is it because you met Jesus and found him to be false? Is it because you put his word to the test and it failed? Is it because you genuinely sought for him and you didn't find him? Or is it because you're just recycling some information that's going on about who he is that contradicts who he says he is? Jesus asked Pontius Pilate this very direct question. Incredible how in whichever circumstance Jesus actually ended up direct in the conversation, even though he was standing before the governor who had his life in his hands. Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say this to you about me? On what basis do you disagree with who Jesus said he is? But philosophically speaking, the truth about who we are and who God is simply cannot come from among us, nor from within us, but from God himself. Why? Because we do not have access to what's beyond this universe. We do not have reach into whatever happened before the Big Bang happened. All right? Whatever it is that you think brought forward this universe. One thing is sure, it's not eternal. I give you that. And you know, if you're serious about facts, you will know that. Well, whatever happened before the universe existed, before time existed, because time has had a beginning, you will never be able to know. You will never be able to discover that truth within yourself or among us, among ourselves. Why? Because we do not have reach into that realm. We need someone that comes from there, that comes from beyond to tell us. And let me tell you, there's no religious leader that ever made such claim. Only Jesus did. As he repeated that to Pontius Pilate, I am not of this world. And this is what entitles me to come and bear witness about the truth. And this is why John declared what he declared at the very beginning of his gospel. In John chapter 1, verse 18, when he said, no one has ever seen God. The only God, that is Jesus, who is at the Father's side, he has made him known, because he's the only one to have ever seen God, because he was from the beginning with him, and one with him. For this reason, whatever truth originates this side of heaven will only ever be a worthless counterfeit, a Barabbas, if you like. I find it so ironic that the crowds basically demanded for the Son of God to be crucified, and instead they chose Barabbas, whose name literally means Son of the Father. And yet one was the real deal, the Son of God, and the other one, it was a robber. It was a common criminal. Someone that must have screwed up pretty badly for being on death row. And the same happens today. Whenever we choose our own truths, whatever that is, against the truth, we effectively identify with the crowds that cast aside the Son of God for the criminal Son of the Father. And with this, I would like to just bring it to a conclusion. I would like to invite the worship team back on stage as we get ready for one final song. I want to say this: if you want to find the truth, start with Jesus. Start with the only person to have ever claimed to have come from the beyond, to have existed before he was born. The only one who claimed not just to have seen God in a vision, but to have seen him face to face in his own realm, to even be one with him in a way that just boggles the mind. Start with Jesus. He's your best chance because he's the only one to have ever claimed all these things. And I tell you, if you gave him a serious try, if you truly asked him to reveal himself to you, and if you truly gave yourself to reading Scripture, this book that God's left to us, to help us discover him and discover ourselves through him, let me tell you, you will not be disappointed. I guarantee you will not try anything else. But here is a bit of a disclaimer. It is only those who are willing to genuinely submit to the truth that will find it. Those who only seek to find a truth that suit themselves will only find a counterfeit. They will only find a Barabbas. Pilate was so close to the truth. He was even standing in front of him. Yet he did not pursue it for the sake of avoiding a riot, for the sake of upsetting the masses. Well, today, just like then, following Jesus carries the same risk. To embrace him for who he said he is carries the same risk. A risk that is only growing greater and greater in nowadays, as holding the absolute and countercultural truth of Jesus is being labeled more and more as, hate speech and stuff like that. But for those who seek truth at all costs, Jesus says this: if you keep my word, then you are my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So, Heavenly Father, I pray for everyone watching right now, and I pray, Father, that this message, that your word, oh God, that it will cover great distances and that it will really land on the hearts of those who are desperate for the truth, desperate for a true north, desperate to, find the truth about themselves, the truth about you, the truth about the future, the truth about their purpose, their reason of being, even find answers for their pain, answers to, Lord God, their brokenness and the stuff that's happened in their life, all the many curveballs that have been thrown at them, oh Father, the fire that they've been through. Father, I pray in Jesus' mighty name that not only this message will find hearts that need to find the truth, but Lord God, that you will prepare those hearts to receive the truth. For truth isn't about I don't know, making it fit our own, I don't know, views and our own lifestyles and our own way of doing life. It's about the opposite. It's about repositioning ourselves in view of this unshifting and unalterable and unchanging truth. And so, Father, I pray that you will prepare hearts, that as the message of truth goes out, it will be received, and it will not just issue in much life, but it will bear much fruit, O God, to your glory, O Father, and to the benefits of all those who will receive your word. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.